Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, you have picked a really good day because today I'm going to be talking all about Rise of the Resistance at Disney's Hollywood Studios. We just got back last week. I'm going to share with you how we were able to ride, what that experience was like, what did I think of the ride itself, and then most importantly, I'm going to let you know if I think it is worth it for your family to jump through all the hoops to ride this ride. And first of all, no worries, there are no spoilers, but I am really glad that you're here. Okay, so we just got back from Walt Disney World last week. We had a very different kind of week. Those of you that follow me on other social media know that my husband actually hurt his knee when we very first walked into Epcot on our very first moments in the park. He ended up hanging out in our villa the entire week after a visit to the Celebration emergency room. He is going to be fine. He was diagnosed with a bad sprain that is on the mend, no surgery required, thank God. But it was a very different kind of Disney trip. And it was so funny because if you watch the video that I did about making sure you have realistic expectations, boy, oh boy, was my theory tested. It was, I will say we had phenomenal family time regardless of what happened. So I'm going to do a whole video about that another time. But today's video is devoted to Rise of the Resistance, which, in case you have been stuck under something heavy for the last few weeks, is the new attraction at Galaxy's Edge at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World. Now, as I'm recording this today, it's actually opening in California. I have not done any research as far as how they are doing the boarding process and all of that there. So you'll have to look that up on your own. Everything I'm going to chat about today is about our experience at Walt Disney World in Florida. So when we were planning this trip, I was really on the fence as to whether we were even going to try to do Rise of the Resistance. I was hearing stories of people getting up at 3:30, 4 a.m. to be able to be there first in line and make sure they got a boarding group. And I was like, yeah, I am out on all of that. There is no attraction that for me would be worth getting up at 3:30 in the morning. Now, your family may be different. Your circumstances may be different. You may be just a huge over-the-top Star Wars fan and just no matter what you had to do, you were going to ride this ride. And God love you. That's awesome. That is not our family. We really do love Star Wars, but we also would have been fine if we didn't ride this attraction until next year, maybe the year after. We're Disney Vacation Club members, so we always know that we're coming back. So going in, we weren't like, no matter what, we're riding Rise. So when I chatted with my friend Shane, who's a VIP tour guide, he shared with me that they had kind of switched it up a little bit. And as long as you were in Hollywood Studios when the park officially opened, that everybody had the same chance of getting a boarding group. So I'm not going to go into as much of the logistics because a lot of YouTubers have done a lot of great videos about that, kind of how you use the My Disney Experience app to get a boarding group. I will tell you that we got to Hollywood Studios at, I want to say probably 6 a.m. They let us through the turnstiles at about 6:20 a.m. And at that point, we got Starbucks, we hung out, and true to their word, right at 7 a.m., you were able to join a boarding group on your My Disney Experience app. Now, I did have a little bit of trouble, and actually I had talked to some friends, experienced Disney people, who had gotten up at 4 a.m., had trouble on their phone, and didn't get a boarding group at all. So if you have technological issues, there is a chance you're not going to get a boarding group. That in and of itself was one of the reasons I was like, I don't understand. So I'm going to get up so early. By the way, 7 a.m. was the opening time the day we were there. And then I may not even get a boarding group. Like if my boys had not been very motivated, this would not have happened. So the first few times I tried, it kind of hesitated for a minute. Then finally we got through. I was able to get us a boarding group. We were awarded boarding group 80, 80. Okay. Now they start from, at least this was the case when I was there. The boarding groups were starting, I believe, at group 8. Like there was no group 1 through 7. So if you got like groups 8 through 15, you were going to board right away. And then on your app, it gives you this little screen that kind of tells you the progress of how close you're getting. They give you, from the time your boarding group is called, 2 hours to return to the attraction. You show up at the attraction after your boarding group is called, and then you're able to ride the ride. Now, that doesn't mean you just walk right on, okay? You might wait anywhere from, I'm hearing 15 minutes. We waited about 30 minutes. Some people, depending on if the ride breaks down, are waiting up to an hour, and this is after their boarding group is called. So what you really don't know what time your boarding group is going to be called. You're just watching the app. So it doesn't even give you an estimate. It gives you like this little line where you've got this little cute droid and it goes, there's like 4 green spaces and you're in the first green space, and then as you scoot up, I noticed that I could see as the boarding groups were moving along, kind of a guesstimate. I was kind of guessing midday. We decided to walk over to Epcot. We hung out, which wasn't open yet, so we hung out at Beach Club for a while. We rode the Skyliner. That was really fun. And then finally, we headed back to our resort because they still weren't calling our boarding group. Headed back to the resort, hung out with Scott, who was convalescing. And around 12:30, we got the notification that our boarding group was being called. So we didn't rush. We just kind of leisurely made our way over to Hollywood Studios. I would say we got there around 1:30, and sadly, Rise of the Resistance was down. Okay, fine. So I've waited all this time. It's taken up my whole morning. We finally get there. Our boarding group is called. Rise of the Resistance is closed. So here was kind of one of the weird things that happened. The cast member said, no worries, the app will tell you when it's boarding again, and then you can come anytime until park closing to ride. Okay, so we moved our reservation. We had reservations at 50's prime time at like 4. So we moved our reservation up. They were able to accommodate us. Great. I might have had a drink at the bar, whatever. I will say Hollywood Studios was incredibly crowded, like wall-to-wall people crowded, like standing room only for Indiana Jones crowded, like 150-minute standby wait for Tower of Terror crowded, uncomfortably crowded. So it wasn't like I could just say, oh, well, let's just enjoy a day at Hollywood Studios. No, we had one fast pass for that day. That's a whole nother conversation about the Hollywood Studios Fast Pass tiers right now. But basically, there was nothing in the park that you could do that was less than an hour wait. Nothing. So we kind of just wandered around, which was not making me super happy. We were able to move our dining reservation up, so fine. But I noticed that it wasn't telling me if I could come back or not. And it didn't like alert me in the app that it was time to come back. So I went and stopped by Guest Experience booth. They have like blue umbrellas now with cast members all over the park. I said, listen, they told me over at Rise of the Resistance that it would tell me on the app when it was time to come back, but it's not telling me. He's like, yeah, it doesn't really do that. I went, okay. He said, you have to watch the boarding groups on the other page, and when they start moving again, then you'll know that it's working and you could head back to the attraction. Okay, so I said, well, you make ever the helpful person. I don't want to be Karen who needs to talk to the manager. My boys accused me of that a couple times on this trip, by the way, and I did not appreciate it. Anyway, so I said, you really need to tell the cast members over there that it's not just showing up in the app. They have to know to go look at the numbers and when the numbers start moving, but whatever. We finished, well, I guess we were in the middle of our dinner and I saw that the numbers started moving again. So I had gone to Guest Experiences before dinner to get that straightened out. So I saw that the numbers started moving. So we didn't rush. We finished our meal. We got over there. It was up and running again. We finally boarded the attraction at around 4 o'clock, I believe. So we had been back in the park since about 1:30. Weren't able to ride the attraction until 4. We got in line. We waited in line about 30 minutes, and then we rode the attraction. Okay, so that's my Disney Hollywood Studios day. That's the amount of time that was pretty much devoted to riding Rise of the Resistance. Like I said, we did have one fast pass. I think it was for Rock and Roller Coaster, and we did do that. But the whole rest of the day was nothing but eating our lunch and riding Rise of the Resistance. Okay, that's our experience. The ride itself. Did I like the ride? Oh my goodness, yes. Yes, yes, double, triple yes. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. I know a lot of people want to experience it all for themselves, but it was unexpected. It was very different than any other ride Disney's ever done. It had almost a live theater. Well, it did. It had like a live theater element to it. So it's almost like a show and a ride. And it's impossible even for me to adequately explain. And again, I don't want to give any spoilers, but I loved the ride. Loved the ride. Like there were so many things about it that it really, I definitely want to ride it again because there was so much going on. I felt like I couldn't take it all in, right? If you've ridden it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't ridden it, you really want to ride it at some point because it's really a wonderful experience. It is a long experience, especially when you add in the 30 minutes that we waited. So the entire attraction really took us close to an hour by the time you add, and I'm just talking like arriving at the attraction and then walking out of the attraction was almost a full 60 minutes. So you do want to make sure that everybody in your party has used the restroom before you get in line. I had gotten that tip from my friend Allison, and I was like very grateful for that tip because I saw some very uncomfortable people, and you really don't want to be having to go to the bathroom when you're trying to enjoy this amazing attraction. So the ride itself, 2 thumbs way up, amazing job Disney. Absolutely loved it as a storyteller, as a creative, as a Star Wars lover, just phenomenal. All right, now let's move on to what you're here for, okay? You, the planner in your family. Is it worth it? Okay, so it really depends. First of all, I would say if you are a single person or adults or people with teenagers who are really, really motivated and you're okay with devoting really a whole day to this, yes, absolutely worth it. You should get up early. You should do whatever it takes. However, if you are a family with maybe elementary school kids or younger who are maybe not going to be as patient with that, I know when my boys were younger, anytime plans changed, they would get very upset. So knowing that it tends to break down, I appreciate that there's a 2-hour window, but if you're somewhere way off property or if you're staying off property or if you're at another park, that actually, it can take a full 2 hours to get back to Hollywood Studios, especially let's say you're in the middle of a meal at Magic Kingdom or whatever the case may be, or your kids are napping and that 2-hour window comes up. I mean, there's a lot of variables. And the fact that it's been breaking down quite a bit. So even that time frame, you have to be able to be flexible. So even though I had mentioned on Twitter that we might not do it, and people really fought back with me for some reason. I don't know why people get like that. But anyway, that's Twitter. So they were like, oh, well, you're going to be in Hollywood Studios anyway, and you're going to go at rope drop, and what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is Hollywood Studios is kind of a miserable place right now, y'all. And I'm sorry, but it is. And I recognize that, well, we were there in what should have been a low attendance week, and it was not. It was not a park that normally I would have been like, oh, this is so fun. Like restaurants were packed, lines for restrooms were long. It was not a fun park to be in. So if you could plan it, like this is what I would probably do if I wanted to ride the attraction and I had little kids and I was going soon, right, while it's still such a big deal and so crowded. I would probably go ahead and go into the park in the morning to try to secure a boarding group. Now, keep in mind, everyone in your party has to be inside the gates in order to get a boarding group, okay? You can't leave somebody back at the room and then get them a boarding group. That does not work. Everyone has to be in the gates of the park and have scanned their magic bands in order to get a boarding group. I said that twice because it's really important that you get that. In hindsight, what I would have done for planning, okay? And definitely go, by the way, check out my friends at Touring Plans because they've had some great input on all of this. I would have planned that as a Hollywood Studios / Epcot day, okay? I would have gone ahead and got there at opening, secured my boarding group. I would have had my Tier 1 Fast Pass planned and maybe a couple of others for the morning hours. And then I would have planned to get out of Dodge and head over to Epcot and make that like my World Showcase day. So that way it can be relaxed, you're not on a huge time crunch. I would not make any dining reservations for this day. I would plan on, if you want to take a midday break, that would be a great day for it. But honestly, I would probably have been more comfortable just being at Epcot because that way when they called our group, it would be very convenient to hop on the Skyliner and head over there, which by the way is amazing. I love the Skyliner. I didn't think I would, but I absolutely loved it. And that way it can just feel like more of a full day without being stressed about when your boarding group is going to be called. You can just go about your business. Also make sure when your boarding group is called, and this will make sense when you're actually looking at the app. If I was a better YouTuber, I would have recorded all of that happening, but I didn't. Tim Tracker did it. A whole bunch of other people did it. So you can go watch their videos, not till I'm done. Don't go watch their videos till I'm done talking. Watch this whole video. You could see that the numbers were moving forward. If you see that those numbers have stopped, it's probably down. So that's going to delay your boarding time, if that makes sense. Another reason to have a touring plan subscription, because on their chat, people were updating when Rise of the Resistance was down, and that was actually the most efficient way to find that out. So that's another great option. So is it worth it for your family? Is for me a definite maybe. If I had known it was going to hijack our whole day, probably still would have done it, but I wish I had had a better understanding of that going in, and I definitely would have made our plans differently to kind of accommodate and be able to flex. If you have very young children, and getting up at 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. to be able to be there by 6:30, to be able to be in the park by 7, feels like just torture to you, then just wait. It is actually okay to not ride this ride. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It is a wonderful attraction, but it is not worth ruining an entire day, especially if your kids will be just put off and have an awful day because they were forced out of bed so early in the morning, or maybe if you will be put off and cranky for the rest of the day. Remember that vacation hours are extremely valuable, and really think long and hard about your overall vacation instead of just this one attraction, and then decide for you and your family if it is worth the time and effort. That's this girl's opinion. Feel free to disagree with me as long as you're nice about it. Down in the comments below, what are you planning to do? Is your family going to ride it? Are you going to go for it? Are you going to take the gamble? Because again, just because you're there doesn't mean you're going to get a boarding group. I would love to hear from you. If you're not already subscribed, I wish you would. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit those bell notifications so you don't miss a thing. And guess what? My merch now shows up on my videos. So there's a scroll right at the bottom. So if you want to support the channel, you can buy everything from a sticker to a mug to an amazing sweatshirt. And I would love for you to do that because it would really help me out. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're being good to each other, and I'll talk to you next time. Bright suns.